Okay, hi everyone. My name is Isela Becerra. I'm a political science major at Biola University. Viola. And today I have the privilege of introducing someone who I ardently look up to within the conservative movement, Allie Beth Stuckey. Allie Beth is a wife, mom of 3, and the host of the podcast Relatable, where she analyzes culture, theology, and politics from a Christian conservative perspective. She is a New York Times best-selling author and has written You're Not Enough, but That's Okay, and Toxic Empathy. Allie Beth speaks to organizations, schools, and churches across the country about the importance of viewing current issues through a biblical worldview. Please join me in giving a round of applause to Allie Beth Stuckey.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having me. This is my first speaking engagement post-victory, and I'm so excited to be here. When I was thinking about this event a couple weeks ago, I was like, okay, it's either going to be super somber, and I'm going to have to give this kind of sad and serious but compelling call to action, or it's going to be kind of like a victory speech. That's also a call to courage, and I'm so happy that it's the latter. Is everyone kind of still feeling like they're on cloud 9? Just a little bit? I am too. This is actually my first election where I was optimistic about the outcome. For the past 2 elections, I just wasn't so sure. And yet every person I talked to, I don't know if this was true for y'all too, every Trump supporter that I talked to on the day of the election just said that they felt this kind of like supernatural peace and joy. It was crazy because I was sitting at church on Sunday and I did not feel good. I had a really bad feeling. I was really nervous. I had a pit in my stomach. And a lot of people that I talked to felt the same way. And then for whatever reason, it just dissipated. Like by Monday, by Tuesday, the sun was shining. I was feeling good. I was like, I kind of think we're going to win. And all day and all night, that's how I felt. And so I actually wasn't surprised at all. But I'm so thankful. As I'm looking back at kind of what made the campaign successful and what it means for me, I think about the reshaping of the conservative side and the Republican Party, the political realignment that has happened over the past few years, that we have now accepted and embraced new people into the fold that has made our political success and Trump's political success possible. Even just a few years ago, I would say in 2020, I wouldn't have foreseen Joe Rogan and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK, even Megyn Kelly and others in the center and center left being Trump supporters. Elon Musk, that's been a game changer. And Casey and Callie Means, the Make America Healthy Again movement. I think it is beautiful that we have built this new coalition. It is actually crazy that we have a Republican Party that is enthusiastically supported by both Caitlyn Jenner and Allie Stuckey. That's wild. And so that means I think that we're doing something right, that really the progressive side, Kamala Harris, the policies that she represents, have just gone too far, whether it's abortion or whether it is declaring that a man wearing a dress is really a woman. At some point, they push too far. And what's interesting is that actually I think the events of 2020 hurt Trump in 2020, but helped Trump in 2024. I think it took a while for the scales to kind of fall off people's eyes and to realize the repercussions of the policies that were put in place because of COVID and to really see the effects of a Joe Biden presidency and to see the dangers in the dark underbelly of BLM and the social justice movement, but they have. And in large part, I would contribute that to this adoption of a new set of Americans, these center and center-left people that have really seen the insanity of the left and come over to our side. But as I said, that success and that reformation of the conservative side has really made me ask myself, what is my role in this as a Christian, first and foremost, conservative woman who is pro-life in every sense, all the way, who is for natural traditional marriage, who believes in biblical values, who doesn't align in a lot of important ways with some of these new members of the Republican Party. It's certainly not to exclude people who want to come over to our side, but at the same time, I can't compromise. At the same time, what I don't want to see is what we've seen in Europe, what we've seen in Canada, is the Republican or the conservative side shifting to the left, so that it basically just looks like the Democrat Party 10 or 20 years ago. That's not what I want. I care too much about America for us to go that direction, because that kind of ideology is actually what got us to where we are now. So I don't want change if all it means is that we're going to go back 10 to 20 years. I want good things for my nation, and I believe that true Christian conservative values are good for my neighbor. They're good for my country. They're good for my children and my children's children's future. And so even though this is a victorious time, and even though I'm very happy and so excited and just thanking God for the mercy of a Donald Trump presidency, that doesn't mean our need for courage stops. It certainly means that we need courage when it comes to our interactions with those who don't agree with us at all, interactions with people on the other side, all of the women who voted for Kamala Harris because they thought they were voting for their bodily autonomy. But it also means courage within our own movement, courage among those who vote like we do, but maybe haven't yet begun to see the light when it comes to these very important moral and existential and controversial issues like abortion, like the family, like gender, like immigration, like social justice. And that is why I wrote the book, Toxic Empathy: How Progressives Exploit Christian Compassion. I wrote this book specifically for women, really for Christian conservative women, especially before the election. I wanted to equip them with the tools, with the words, the arguments that they needed to talk to their friends who were on the fence, who are part of what I call the mushy middle, maybe on the left side, and to explain to them how progressive policies and ideas, while they are sold to you as compassionate, are actually very harmful. And so the premise of the book is that progressives, especially in the media, they use your empathy to emotionally manipulate you into being on their side. They make you think that, for example, being for abortion is being for the woman or for the vulnerable, or being for open borders is most compassionate for the migrant. And I think we've all seen this both before and after the election. Certainly before the election, we saw it when it came to the rhetoric surrounding abortion, the conflation of abortion and miscarriage, how they pulled on our heartstrings with this story and made us believe that in order to save women's lives, in order to protect women's health, that we had to vote for the candidate who supported abortion through all 9 months. That is how toxic empathy works. Now, when people hear, who maybe aren't familiar with the arguments that I've made, when people hear that title, toxic empathy, it throws them off just a little bit, which is kind of part of the point, because I want someone to read it and say, hang on, I thought empathy was unconditionally good. I thought that we should always feel empathy. I thought it was the highest virtue. How could empathy ever be bad? How could it ever be toxic? And first, let me say that not all empathy is destructive and toxic. I open up the book telling a story of a woman that I saw in the airport. I happened to be traveling by myself at that time, And she had her baby, she was dealing with the car seat, she had her suitcases, and she was trying to manage all of this by herself. And when I saw her, I immediately knew what to do. I knew what she needed. I knew how to alleviate her stress. And I went to her and I offered to carry a bag. It was an easy thing to do. I followed her to her seat. I saw the tears welling in her eyes because she was so overwhelmed. And the reason I knew exactly what to do in that moment was because I had been there. I had been in her shoes. I had felt how she felt. And so because I was able to feel her pain, because as a mom of 3, I've been there and I've had the woman come up to me and say, I get it. I'm a mom. Let me help you. I then was able to transfer that empathy to her, and it compelled me to do something that actually helped her. That kind of empathy can be very powerful. It's not so different from what we are told in Scripture to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Even Jesus is described as a high priest who empathizes with our weaknesses. He was as we are, yet was without sin. And so not all empathy is bad. Because it means to place yourself in someone's shoes, it can lead you towards lifting their burdens or helping them or loving them. But here's the thing about empathy is that because it is so powerful, because you are feeling how someone else feels, it can also blind you. It can blind you to reality and morality. I don't know if you've read Abigail Schreier's book, Bad Therapy. She talks about a book called Against Empathy by Paul Bloom, and he is a Yale professor. And how they both describe empathy in their books is actually a little more negative than how I did in my book, but their arguments are very interesting. What they found is that the more children in school are taught about empathy as the highest virtue through social emotional learning curriculum, that actually the meaner they are, the more exclusive they are to their peers. And how Abigail described it to me is full of empathy and mean as hell. And the phenomenon happens when you present someone with a victim, whether it is the boy that you are told is trapped in the wrong body, whether it is the poor pregnant woman who says she needs an abortion, or whether it is the illegal immigrant who is begging for a better life, whether it is the couple that says they just want to be able to have a child, even though naturally they're unable to do so in an LGBT relationship, whether it is any victim that the progressive media hoists up when they say this is the person for whom you must have empathy. When you channel all of your feelings towards that person, you are then blinded to everything else on the other side of the moral equation. And so the power of feeling what that person feels actually means you lose all objectivity. You lose the ability to see things as they are, which means you lose the ability to judge rightly. So, for example, NPR told a story that was very heartbreaking. This was right after the Dobbs decision, so this was in 2022. And this was a woman named Samantha, who was pregnant with her 7th child in the state of Texas. And at the 20-week ultrasound, she found that her baby, named Halo, a little girl, had a fetal anomaly. And she wanted to have an abortion. But in the state of Texas, you can't abort a child because that child has special needs. And so, as NPR told this story, they focused on Samantha, the mother's pain, her poverty, her plight, what she had to go through, the anxiety that she felt as she was carrying this child, the pain of labor and delivery, the cost of paying for a funeral, all of the distress of holding a baby and letting her die within your arms, so that by the end of that story, you feel so much empathy for Samantha that you draw the conclusion that NPR wants you to draw, which is that abortion would have been the compassionate option. And that these pro-life laws that are stopping someone like Samantha from getting an abortion are cruel. That is the conclusion that they want you to come to. They want to pull on your heartstrings and focus your empathy so fully, so exclusively on their purported victim that you forget about the person on the other side of the moral equation. You forget about the person who is actually the victim in this story, and that is the baby. Because what the purveyors of toxic empathy don't tell you is the cost on the other side. They don't tell you what the alternative would have been. If Samantha had been able to get an abortion in the state of Texas at 20 weeks, the horror and the pain and the barbarism that would have been required to kill that child, to poison that child, to cause cardiac arrest in that baby, to dismember that baby, and then to discard her like toxic waste, that's what NPR won't tell you. They only want you to feel empathy for one person so you don't think about the moral cost of their policy. That is when empathy becomes toxic. What NPR didn't want to tell us is the reality of abortion, and what they didn't want to say was that actually they believe discarding this baby like toxic waste would have been better than this baby being born whole and held by her parents and loved and kissed and talked to before she died. But that is what we are required to think about. That is the task that we have as Christians, as conservatives, is that we don't buy into the narratives of toxic empathy that only tell us one side of the story and leave out the truth. Empathy can be a powerful thing. It can also be a destructive thing. It can lead us towards love. It can also lead us towards lies. Because love and empathy actually aren't the same thing. Empathy feels how someone feels, but love for the Christian has a definition. God is love. That's 1 John 4:8. So that says to me that he alone gets to say what it is. He gets to define it. He has that authority, and he tells us exactly what it is in 1 Corinthians 13. There are lots of descriptors of love in that chapter, but one of the verses says, "Love never rejoices in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth." Rejoices with the truth. That means that love and lies can never go hand in hand. That means in order to be truly loving, not just empathetic and feeling how someone feels, but in order to be truly loving, love has to be rooted and grounded in the truth. So that means with every issue, with every story that we hear, we don't simply say, how does this make me feel? Or how does this person feel? But what is true? The empathetic option may have been to affirm that woman's right to abort her child, but that was not the loving option. The loving option was to care for the mother and to save her child and to allow that baby to be born whole and to die with dignity. That is why so many of your friends, especially your female friends, are progressive. They are probably well-meaning. Most of them probably wouldn't say that they love abortion. Most of them probably wouldn't even say that they're pro-abortion or that they love illegal immigration, but because they have been sold this lie that progressivism is kind, that progressivism is compassionate, because most of them have no idea what even happens in an abortion. Most of them have no idea the moral cost of it, what happens on the other side of that story. All they are reading are the stories of toxic empathy that are told to them on social media and in the media, and they've never stopped to think about that extra layer. But what is on the other side of this? There are 5 chapters in my book, and they're all titled A Lie, and you'll notice a pattern in all of these lies, these mottos that you've heard so often. The first lie is abortion is healthcare. The second lie is that trans women are women. The third lie is that love is love. The fourth lie is that no human being is illegal. And the fifth lie is that social justice is justice. Now, what you might notice about all of those mottos, I really did not have to think hard to come up with these chapter titles, because these are mottos and mantras that we hear all the time. And what you'll notice about them is that they are circular, is that they don't actually define the terms. They say something like love is love, but if love is not defined, then it doesn't mean anything. If a trans woman is a woman, but you never define woman, then that doesn't mean anything. That is what Matt Walsh discovered through his documentary. He tried to get people to break away from this circular propaganda to define the terms within the mottos, and people couldn't do it. That is a sign of good propaganda, by the way. It sounds so good that your brain shuts off and you don't even ask, but what does that mean? So abortion is healthcare, trans women are women, love is love, no human is illegal, and social justice is justice. All sound really good until you ask yourself, but what is abortion? But what is a woman? But what is love? But what does illegal mean, and what does justice mean? Another one that we see this so strongly in, and it's interesting because we actually did not see this in the Harris campaign at all, and I'll give my thoughts as to why that is, but we see this same kind of pattern when it comes to gender. The stories that we are told from the media are about this poor child who feels that he is born in the wrong body, and he would finally be free, he would finally be liberated if you could just allow him to go through puberty blockers and to get a procedure that makes him look more feminine and go into the women's restroom and play on the women's soccer team. Then finally this young person will be happy. And how does it harm you? How is it affecting you? It doesn't matter as long as these people are satisfied, and we're given the same manipulation tactic that if you don't allow them to destroy their bodies in this way, then they will kill themselves. They will die. They will be abused. They will be bullied. That is toxic empathy. When you are only encouraged to feel how a particular person feels, and you forget about the people, about the girls, about the women on the other side of this moral equation. That is the danger of politics of vibes. That is the danger of the politics of feeling. And that is why you feel most likely on your college campus or at your school like you are alone. Because so many only feel their way through politics rather than actually thinking, rather than actually asking themselves, what is true? And conservatives are so often chastised for not being caring or compassionate enough. But what I argue in my book, and what I try to argue every day, is actually progressive policies are not helpful at all. Something that I hear often from Christians is that, okay, Republicans kind of get it right on abortion, but Democrats get it right when it comes to caring for the poor, or caring for racial minorities, or caring for the migrant. And what I say is that's not true. They don't. We don't judge policies by their stated intentions. We judge their policies by their conclusions. We judge policies by their outcomes. So not how does this sound, but how did this work? And you don't really have to be an an expert, or you don't have to research for very long to figure out the answer to that question. All you have to do is visit a city that is governed by progressive policies. Have the cities across the country that have become more progressive, have they become better and cleaner and safer as they have become more progressive, or have they become dirtier and less safe? Are the vulnerable people in those cities, the poor, the child, the woman, the homeless person, the drug addicted, is that person better off after 5+ years of increasingly progressive policy implemented in that city, or are they worse off? Are they more likely to be placed in a violent situation? Are they more likely to be addicted to and die by a fentanyl overdose? Are those cities better for Americans, or are they worse? That's the only question you have to ask, or the only retort you have to give when someone says, but progressive policies are kinder and more compassionate. For whom? Show me. Show me the consequences and the outcomes of those policies. There is a young woman named Daisy who messaged me. And I always think of this whenever I'm told, sometimes the truth is too harsh, and sometimes conservatives, they care too much about facts. And sometimes we just need to let a lie be. If that's how someone feels, then we can just affirm their feeling and let it go. We live in this very therapy-centric culture in which we are told this lie that all feelings are valid, when that's not true. Not all feelings are valid. And so conservatives very often are told that we simply have to affirm how someone feels in order to be compassionate. And sometimes, as a person, as a woman, that can get to me, because I certainly don't want to hurt people's feelings. I certainly don't want someone to think that I don't care. And so I try very hard to balance that. But I also always think about this story that encourages me and motivates me. I've been talking about gender and the lie of gender ideology, the danger of gender ideology for a long time, as many others have. And a young woman named Daisy reached out to me. She sent me a message on Instagram several months ago and said, I was a part of a PragerU documentary about detransitioners. And I didn't get to share this part in the documentary, but I wanted you to know that right after I had transitioned, she had gotten a double mastectomy. She was trying to live as a man when she was very young, 19, 20 years old. She said she started listening, for whatever reason, to conservative podcasts, not just mine, others as well. And she said, for some reason, I would always tune into your show whenever you were talking about gender, because I love to try to formulate arguments in my head and to rebut everything you said. And yet, for some reason, whenever you talked about gender, I couldn't come up with anything. I couldn't come up with a comeback. I couldn't come up with a reply. And she said, eventually, I just realized that I was living a lie. And eventually, by the grace of God, she did detransition. And she is now living as the woman that God made her to be. She is married. She is a mom of 2. And let me tell you, though, she is still dealing with the consequences of toxic empathy. When she was a young person, and those in her life told her, yes, if you'll be happy, we will let you do this. We will encourage you to change your body, change your name, change your appearance. If you will be free, if you will be happy, if this is how you feel, then we affirm you. And they allowed her to, encouraged her to, supported her in getting a double mastectomy. And now Daisy openly and publicly talks about the pain that she endures because she cannot breastfeed her babies. She wants that more than anything. The picture that she posted of herself right after she had her second child, feeding a little bottle of formula to that baby and crying because she would never be able to have that moment because of a decision that she made when she was a young person that was affirmed by those in her life who thought that they were being led by empathy. But they lied to her, and they allowed her to live a lie.
So right there, the question is, what is really more loving? Is it more loving to lie to someone because it might not hurt their feelings? Or would it have been more loving for someone in Daisy's life early on to say no? And for her to be able to look back now and say, thank the Lord that someone saved me from permanently maiming my body. There's another story in this same chapter about a woman named Laura Perry Smalt. I don't know if you've heard her story. She's amazing, but she actually felt for a very long time that she was stuck in the wrong body. And she would fantasize about being a man named Jake. And she thought that if she were a man, if she were a son, if she were a brother, if she were a boyfriend, if she were a husband, then she would be strong, she would be free, she would feel confident. And so when she was an adult, that's the path that she went down. When she met a group of people that affirmed this identity and started calling her by her chosen name, she felt euphoric. When she got her double mastectomy, she was happy. When she got her hysterectomy, she was happy. Until she looked in the mirror one day and she realized, I'm still a woman. And no amount of hormones that I've taken, nothing I've done so far has really changed that. And she was so frustrated because this is what she had been promised, that if she went down this path of being who she really is, then finally she would be okay. That's what the people in her life who were affirming her told her. But there were a couple people in her life who never affirmed her. And these were the people that she had basically cut out for years. And these were her parents, her conservative Christian parents who refused to ever call her by her new name, who refused to ever call her he. They just didn't get it, she thought. But around this time, she started having her own doubts. She started reconnecting with her parents, and her mom asked her, hey, can you do something for me? Can you start transcribing my Bible study notes? I need my Bible study notes put up on this blog. Can you please type them out for me? And so Laura did. And how she describes it is just like the word of God started working in her heart, started planting a seed that God watered and gave growth, and something started changing. She wanted to go to church. So she went to church, and she went to her parents' church, this conservative Christian church where everyone still called her Laura. Everyone still referred to her as female pronouns, and yet embraced her and loved her. And Laura says it is because of the Word of God, the Holy Spirit, and the uncompromising truth-telling of her parents and of their Christian friends that eventually woke her up to realizing, I will never be a man. And God has not made me a man. And so she also detransitioned, praise God. She is married. She is one of just the most spirit-filled, joyful people, so articulate in sharing her testimony and the gospel. But it was because of the people in her life who did not affirm her in the name of empathy, but loved her enough to tell her the truth that God used to change her and to spare her possibly from ultimate destruction, because those who go down the path of denying how God created them, whether it is sexuality or whether it is gender or anything else, do not end up happy. They end up ultimately unfulfilled, because all of us are unfulfilled outside of the calling that God has placed on our life. All of us are unfulfilled when we try to live outside of that created order. And so when I think about my role in this new conservatism that we have, that is in many ways really exciting, this kind of new world that we live in, it's not just to sit back and say, okay, I'm glad that we have enough people to win an election, but how can we pull as many people towards truth? Because a lot of the people that are in this new Republican Party are not where we are when it comes to abortion and gender and sexuality. Their mentality is really just live and let live. which is okay, but that's also what got us here. And there is one woman in this movement. We have a mutual friend, and I won't say her name because I want to respect the privacy of the journey that she's on, but she is definitely prominent in the health world and is making a huge impact. And when she started in this realm and she started going on conservative podcasts and getting to have influence in politics, she was pro-choice. She was agnostic, maybe even an atheist. She had mostly progressive ideals, except she found that conservatives gave her the warmest reception when it came to talking about corruption and public health. But just the other day, I heard from her that because of the Christians that she has met and that she has talked to, her mind is changing. Her mind is changing when it comes to abortion, when it comes to God, when it comes to marriage, the role of the family, the existence of male and female, even the importance of the existence of a sovereign nation and borders. I think that is my and our role. To bring as many people possible, not just over to the Republican side, but to the side of truth. To the side of truth in love. Because what people are realizing is that this world of toxic empathy is really superficial. Affirming people's delusions or validating people's sin or supporting people down a path of destruction is actually leading us, not just individually, but societally in a really bad direction, and they're looking for something more. And so I want those of us who are Christian conservatives to be the anchor on the right. I want to hold us down this way so that people look to us and ask, how should I think about this? Not the other way around. I want all of these people to move over to the right, not for all of us to move over to the left. And that means we are going to have to hold our ground. That means we are going to have to hold the line. We are going to have to be sure about what we believe and why. Be persuasive and completely unapologetic in advocating for what is good, right, and true. I had a women's event this year. It was my first time hosting my own event. I'm usually here giving speeches, which I love to do, but this was a unique experience for me. It was beautiful. There were 4,000 women who came all across North America, much more than we thought would show up, but it was it's a turbulent time. It's a chaotic time. People wanted clarity, they wanted courage, and they wanted truth. And it was nothing I did. There were so many teachers there, and the worship was amazing. And what someone told me at the end was, wow, after I heard truth, uncompromising biblical truth, and I was able to be around these women, and I was refreshed by worship, I walked out of there with zero fear of man. And that's what I want. That's what I want every Christian woman, every conservative Christian woman to feel, that I have a zero fear of man. And we should feel really validated after this election, by the way. Because not only does it mean that a lot of people are already on our side, but there's a lot of people who are open to being on our side. That there are a lot of people in your life that are extremely persuadable, that are really open to truth. Give them some time. They might be disappointed. Maybe they're grieving after Donald Trump won, but I can't tell you how many people I talk to on a daily basis who have changed fundamentally since 2020. They saw the events, everything that happened, and their mind, their entire worldview has changed. And sometimes it can feel like our country is going to hell in a handbasket, but you just never know whose mind you can change. You don't have to be an influencer to have influence. You don't have to be famous to be able to have a platform that God gives you to change someone's heart or to plant the seed. Your goal, your ambition may not be, probably should not be, to change someone's mind in every conversation, but your goal is to get the ball a little bit further down the field. Your goal is to plant a seed that then someone else waters, someone else prunes. You are a part of a movement. You are a part of this foundational, I think, seismic shift happening in our country right now. And while there are a lot of people that voted Republican, we can get more women next time. We've got a lot of work to do, and I'm telling you, it is very fertile soil. The women of this country not only are hungry for truth, but they're also seeing their male counterparts shifting to the right. And I just can't imagine that they are going to stay far to the left forever, because they don't want to stay single forever. And so we have a very vulnerable group of young women who want to know there's something else out there for them, and you all play a part in that. Something that I like to tell people, because I get asked all the time, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make a difference. I don't know how to make an impact. I mean, there are a lot of practical things I could tell you. Like, number one, if you are in a state where one of these measures passed to secure abortion as a right through all 9 months, make sure that you are donating your time and your resources to pregnancy centers in your state, in your area. Make sure you're doing that. I mean, obviously, use your platform in a way that is glorifying to God and bold and sets an example for those around you. But this is what I often say. I say, just do the next right thing in faith, with excellence, and for the glory of God. If you always just do the next right thing in faith, with excellence, and for the glory of God, you will never fail. And God will use that in ways beyond what you can see right now. It may not be until eternity that you are able to see the tapestry of testimonies that you played a role in just by being faithful, just by being obedient and stewarding the calling and the talent and the resource that He has given you. Because we do not serve a God who does anything accidentally. He does nothing arbitrarily. Nothing throws Him off. Nothing takes Him aback. He does everything purposely and providentially. And you have been placed in this country at this time, on this small spot of the earth, on this tiny speck of eternity, purposely, by a God who does everything with intention. And that can feel very overwhelming as you're thinking about what you want to do with your life. But again, just do the next right thing in faith, with excellence, and for the glory of God. Thank you. And I'm going to answer some questions. I got I don't know how long, 10 to 15 minutes, but
Yeah,
happy
15,
to answer them.
10. But come over here and line up. There's a lot of girls, yay. So, also your name, your school, and where you're from, please.
Hi, my name is Anna Young. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, right here, and I go to Concordia University, Wisconsin. So after the election, we saw that Trump won Florida pretty easily and that babies' lives will be saved in Florida, praise God. But in Missouri, he also won Missouri, but abortion is enshrined in the Constitution now. So why do you think that's happening? Do you think it's because of big tent republicanism, maybe the pro-life position being removed from the party platform, or do you think there's just a lot of people that are voting for Trump that aren't quote-unquote conservative?
Yeah, I think that there's a few reasons. I think one that you listed could absolutely be the case, that someone's voting for Trump because they like that he promised not to sign an abortion ban, because he doesn't really talk about abortion anymore. And so they're actually pro-choice, but they're voting for Trump for other reasons. It could also be that people voted for Trump and they didn't vote down ballot, or Republicans didn't vote down ballot, and so only Democrats did. And then I think a lot of it is also just a lot of misinformation. There are people who could have also not voted on that at all because they were confused about it. But the propaganda when it comes to these abortion amendments that tells people that miscarriage and abortion are the same thing, that lies to people and says that pro-life laws restrict miscarriage care, which is not true. No pro-life law prohibits or restricts miscarriage care in any way in a single state. And yet a lot of people are duped by this toxic empathy that makes them believe that they are saving women from dying because of lack of miscarriage care by signing on to the pro-abortion measure. So I think that's a lot of it. And I didn't see any governor besides, maybe I'm wrong, and I apologize if I am, but besides Ron DeSantis in the state of Florida, I really didn't see a whole lot of Republicans talking about these propositions and amendments. I mean, I know that him and Casey DeSantis, they worked so hard traveling the state of Florida, telling everyone exactly what was in those propositions, and they failed. It was still really close, though, but they failed. And so I think the people of the state, but the Republican politicians in the state have to do their job in informing people what these amendments really mean. So thank you for your question.
Hi, my name is Mary Fowler. I'm a senior at Christendom College, and I was curious on what your response would be to the prominent claim being made right now by Christians and non-Christians that casting a ballot for Trump was not the Christian vote.
I feel like my whole life is dedicated to responding to that. Sorry, I don't know what that was. I hear that so much too, and it's a very frustrating. It's a frustrating criticism to hear. But look, a vote, as you've probably heard, I didn't come up with this. A vote is not a Valentine. A vote is not a sacrament. You are not voting for your pastor or your bestie. You're not voting for someone that you think is perfect. Vote, votar, the Latin word for vote means a choice. Decision, this is also from a pastor that I had on my show. He said, decision, the Latin word for decision is decidere, and that means to cut off. And so if the only thing that you're doing by your vote, making your choice, is to cut off the possibility of the other candidate going in the White House, then that's good enough. And so in this case, we didn't have just, it's just kind of the lesser of two evils. No, we had a candidate whose policies were decidedly much more evil. So we didn't have to just vote for the lesser of two evils. We voted to lessen evil. There are certainly things that I don't love that Donald Trump has said. I disagree with his IVF policy. I disagree with the things he said on abortion. But again, my role is to bring him, not directly, but the people around him and the people who voted for him as much as I can to my position. And I am much more likely to do that when he's president than if Kamala Harris is president, because she's definitely not listening to me. But Donald Trump does listen to pro-lifers. I know that for a fact. And so just when I ask myself, which policies lead to more peace and order and righteousness, and which ones lead to unmitigated, unrestrained evil and chaos, it's very obvious to me which one it is. And of course, that was Donald Trump. And that's why it was God's great mercy on our nation that he won.
Hi, my name is Victoria. I'm from California, and I'm a sophomore at Kansas State. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with us.
Yes.
I know I really appreciate it. So I have a question, but it kind of has a little bit of background to it. So I'm actually a receptionist at a high-risk pregnancy imaging center. So for those of you who are kind of confused, all the moms who are high risk, whether it's age, previous history, things like that, we do all their ultrasounds. So with that, we do see a lot of genetic malformations and things like that. But if a baby has a fatal abnormality, what is your take on that? If it's, because I have seen girls come in, 17-year-olds, where their baby is missing their entire abdominal stomach.
Yeah.
It's not going to make it the whole 40 weeks. What is your take on that? Because right now I'm just kind of I don't know, and I that kind of.
Well, thank you for your question. So those babies, even if a baby has special needs, even if a baby has something awful happening, the brain isn't developed, or as you said, sometimes the organs just don't develop, and it's very obvious that that baby is not going to be able to live, it is still not right to purposely poison that baby. Now, early delivery is the option, is the compassionate approach, I think. And this is not just me, I'm not an OBGYN, but there is a group of pro-life OBGYNs that I would encourage you guys to follow. That's just the organization of pro-life OBGYNs. And what they say is that really there's no reason for a late-term abortion because either way, the baby has to come out, right? And so there's no reason to kill the baby before the baby comes out. If the baby has to come out for the health of the baby or the health of the mother, you deliver that baby. And you give the mother and the child as compassionate care as you possibly can. Of course, you should save the life of the mother if you have to take the baby out, but there's no reason to poison and then dismember the baby first. So that's what I would say. It's never okay to intentionally kill an innocent person. So do everything that you can to compassionately care for and to preserve the lives of both parties. I would say that's the pro-life position. Yes.
That was our last question. Please give one last round of applause to Allie.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And then I also have a few more announcements. Sorry. So Allie is going to sign her book,